Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. So I'm I'm kind of liking this little format that I've discovered here, which is to do a little live stream when something breaking comes up. So obviously I do my normal edited videos, but I'm also thinking, oh good, I'm actually seeing this on here. Woo, sorry, I gotta turn this down for a second. Anyway, I wanted to be able to see if anybody asked me live chat questions, so let me turn on live chat. Okay. I'm just going to put this up here, and if anybody has any questions while I'm doing this live stream, you can always ask. So anyway, so what I wanted to talk about was ARK Invest's Orbital Aerospace. They had this big idea that they published, oh gosh, was it back in January or maybe it was February? I did an episode on ride hailing and robo-taxis, etc., and I had always intended to go back and talk about some more of the chapters in their big ideas thing. This is chapter 11, by the way, as you can quite easily tell since it says 11. This is a huge document. I highly recommend reading it. It's super approachable. I mean, it's just, it's basically like a PowerPoint that's really pretty and everything. But anyway, I want to make sure that that I cover this because as of tomorrow, right? Today's the 29th, yes. As of tomorrow morning, I've put in a limit call for 20 shares of ARKX. What they're doing is they're introducing a new fund called ARKX, which is like SpaceX or something like that. Although, to be clear, at the get-go, ARK does not include any SpaceX in their portfolio for this new ETF. And I believe the reason why is because SpaceX is a private company, so they don't really have access to that right now. So anyway, that's unfortunate, but I'm still going to buy a few shares. We'll see how much it ends up costing. I mean, I put a relatively low limit. Right now it's worth zero. I went on E-Trade and I was like, buy some shares, and it's like, it's worth zero. So I was like, well, okay. So, I mean, I won't be able to afford 20 shares, but we'll see what happens and how much it is when it launches. But basically, my thought about this is that they are so heavy into, they talk about the lower cost of launching and satellite internet for all with low latency. And I think that that is a huge part of what SpaceX is doing specifically, of course. And so I think ARK Invest is basically just waiting to see what happens with Starlink, and hopefully Starlink will spin off into its own company, or potentially SpaceX might eventually roll itself out as a public company, but we'll find out how that works. So all right. I've got somebody from Ghana who's here. Hello, Bernard. It's nice to see you. I think you're here for a lot of my live streams, actually, so it's good to see you. Anyway, so I just wanted to talk about it briefly. I'm very excited about this. I'm not an investor. This is not investment advice. I just want to be very clear about that. I'm a rather pathetic investor because I'm extremely risk averse. So I'll risk like a couple of dollars on anything, but if it comes down to a lot of money, I won't really risk it. So anyway, so just again, take that with a grain of salt. But anyway, I think that this is really fantastic. I'm extremely excited to see what ARK is going to do in terms of their investments. They have things like Lockheed Aerospace, which is very traditional, but they also have companies like Google, or Alphabet, I guess, and Amazon, and 3D printing companies, and other companies that are related to space in a different sort of way than you might think traditionally, right? So 3D printing is actually becoming huge in space. I don't know if people know, but the Electron rocket that's made by Rocket Labs has a large amount of it 3D printed. There are other spacecraft that have large amounts 3D printed. Some of the larger overwrap vessels, the COPVs, they're talking about doing 3D printing for that. I think that's really cool, but they have to withstand incredible pressures, so I don't know if that'll work or not. But anyway, so there's a lot in 3D printing that will be affected by that. The low latency internet, and then ARK Invest, let me see if I can, it's kind of a pain to use this, but let me see. OBS software is lovely, but let's see if I can move this up. It's just hard to interact with web pages. All right, I think I've got this so you can all see that. Yes, okay, so the middle one, so global connectivity is one of their highlights that they talk about, and I think that global connectivity is huge, right? And that is half the planet basically does not have at least high-speed internet access, and a lot of that group of people doesn't have any internet access. So this is huge. This is a gigantic problem if it continues to exist, and so SpaceX and specifically Starlink are working hard to solve that problem. The middle one is a very, very different thing. Hypersonic point-to-point long-haul travel. So essentially they're looking at 7+ hour flights. In this case it says 10+ hours. But basically all the really, really long-haul flights, which is not just human beings, but also cargo to some extent. Although there's less of a need for that, right? Unless it's like live cargo or something that's critically that it matters a lot that it gets there really, really quickly. But for the most part, I think this would be human-based travel. I don't know personally if that is going to come to fruition anytime very soon, but this is something that SpaceX, of course, has talked about with their Starship, and that it's a pretty amazing thing when you look at what they're talking about. And what they're looking at is not using the Super Heavy booster on the bottom of the Starship, but using just the top part, just the Starship, so not the Super Heavy, to launch into just the edge of space and to go hypersonic like a missile and end up someplace else. So a classic thing might be like New York to Tokyo, right? Or Los Angeles to Beijing, or any place to Sydney, Australia, because Sydney's really, really far away. So anyway, so some place where you've got this really, really long haul trip that might take 12, 14, 15 hours. The longest one I ever did, we went to South Korea for a conference, and we flew direct from Atlanta to South Korea, and one direction was 15.5 hours. Of course, the other way coming back with the jet stream was faster, but it was bleh. Now the problem is the cost, and that's the reason why I don't know about this, because as a normal consumer, of course, I don't have the kind of money where if it costs $50,000 a ticket or something that I could afford that. Now there is a class of people who could do that, but I don't know if it's enough people to justify creating this entire new transportation system. So anyway, I worry about this middle point a little bit with ARK Invest. Oh gosh, let me take a look at some of these comments here. So Bernard asked, when am I coming to Ghana for vacation? As soon as possible. We actually looked at going to oh gosh, is it Zimbabwe? No. Goodness gracious. We looked at going and climbing Mount Kilimanjaro this spring, but the problem was COVID was still too much of a mess. So if we do that, we're going to try to hit as many countries in Africa as we can. So it would be pretty cool. Anyway, okay, so VB says, half the people not having internet access, probably they're better off that way. I don't know if that's a personal comment about me or not. I hope that's not a personal comment about me. But anyway, it could be better, yes. But there is this information divide, all jokes aside. It makes a big difference if people have information and they are able to access it in a free way. That's all to the good, I hope. One hopes, at least. Anyway, Jeff Key says, nice work, thank you. And how do you buy the new ETF like any other regular ETF as of ARKK? Yes. So what I did was, like I said, I just went on to E-Trade, which I have an account with, and I was not able to purchase the shares directly because, of course, they're not available until tomorrow. So what I did was I put on a limit call, and I just set a limit. I said 20 shares, and I put a very low limit. So probably that call will fail. And, because I don't know what it's going to open at. I know that they are managing around $1 billion in assets immediately with the opening of this fund. And of course, as people put money into the fund, then we'll get more and more money into it, and I'm sure they will reinvest it into whatever companies they think reasonable. I believe that ARK has a good vision. Again, it's kind of a weird thing. Somebody asked me about my investment strategy, and basically it's HODL, the HODL, right? I have done almost nothing with my investments. I essentially buy stock and I never sell them. I'm 56 right now. I plan on retiring in 9 or 10 years, and so at that point I will begin liquidating my stocks. But all the stuff that goes on, it makes it really easy. Everyone who's freaking out about whether Tesla is at $600 today or $800 or $550 or whatever, I don't really care, because all I care about is what they're going to look like in 2030 or 2031. That's what matters to me. So this is the same kind of thing. I think that no matter what ARKX's cost is, tomorrow when they open, I will buy some shares, and if it immediately plunges by 50%, oh well, I'm not going to get too stressed about that, because that's money that I've just set aside for retirement. So anyway, so that's how I did it. I had to put on a limit call. Like I said, I couldn't do a standard trade, so that was the consequence of that. Anyway, Brian Chase says he likes the Don't Mess with Tesla t-shirt. So there you go. Don't mess with Tesla. That is available on our merch store. It's Dr. Know-It-All Knows at itemorder.com, or you can look in the description of this video and find it. But I hope you like this. I designed it myself. I thought that was pretty cool. So, and I moved the star over, this traditional Don't Mess with Texas star t-shirt. Let's see. I just need to back up a little bit. Anyway, the star is usually over here. But, I can't do this backwards. All right, the star is usually over here, but Austin is the capital, and Austin is right there, and Austin is where the Gigafactory is. So I figured between all of those things, why not have a Don't Mess with Tesla t-shirt? So when I go to, I'm planning on going to Texas in May, and when I go there, of course, I will be wearing this shirt. At least some of the time. It'll be kind of silly, but maybe some of the people in Texas will like it. Maybe they won't. I hope they like it, because they all have guns there, so we'll see. Anyway, oh, you're welcome, Jopkey. No problem at all. So anyway, getting back to the big idea thing, the multiplanetary species here. Humans have been living on International Space Station for 20 years. Within a decade, humans could inhabit the moon and Mars. This is something that is this is really important, or really interesting, that these three key points here, global connectivity, hypersonic point-to-point travel, and multiplanetary species, are literally all SpaceX's goals. So ARKX has sort of taken those goals on, but since SpaceX is a private company, I don't know if they can't invest or they're not allowed to invest as an ETF. I know it's very difficult. You have to have millions and millions of dollars in order to invest in SpaceX when they do a funding round, and it's all privately done. So, so maybe at some point they could if they're allowed to, but I'm not actually sure they're allowed to make an investment in this. But anyway, at some point, either SpaceX will IPO and go public, or certainly they will spin off Starlink as a public company, I hope. And so I think it's good to be in at the ground level with this, because then, of course, the ETF will buy into that future vision, and of course any other companies like that they're allowed to get into, they'll buy these other companies. So I think it's all to the good that they're going to be involved in this and working on this. Let me go down one more page here. Apparently someone is quite interested in okay, so let me go down to this page here. I can go back up if anybody's interested. All right. But I think this is a fascinating thing. So what is going on in terms of the internet connectivity? That is this image actually demonstrates exactly what they're talking about. So currently there are many satellites, of course, that are in geostationary orbit that are about 22,000 miles or 38,000 kilometers away, something like that. So 38,000 kilometers, 22,000 miles-ish, something like that. Anyway, and what happens is the Earth, of course, rotates once every 24 hours. And at that distance away, these satellites rotate once every 24 hours. So magically, they appear to stay in the same place in the sky over and over again. And so they don't move. The problem with that is you can see that 700 milliseconds of latency is 2/3 of a second to get there to the satellite and back again, because even though light travels very rapidly, it takes a long time to get that far. So the deal is, with this much shorter distance of only 3-4, it's different distances, but somewhere in the 500 kilometer range or 300 miles, that the latency is less than 40 milliseconds, possibly even a little bit less. And so therefore the transmission speed is analogous. So the latency is the issue of, this doesn't really matter all that much if you're watching a movie or something, because there's a buffering that happens. But if you are if you're trying to play a game or you're interacting on the internet with something like that, these longer latencies cause big problems. So you want to have low latency, and so that's the whole reason why Starlink is launching this giant constellation of satellites that are very close to the Earth. And the consequence of that is that they're whizzing around much faster than these ones in geostationary orbit. So instead of just having one to cover like a whole area, they have to have hundreds or thousands. The initial goal is 12,000 of these satellites in orbit, but they'll be zipping around. One interesting thing about it is it's actually faster than cable internet if it gets to working, because they'll use lasers in a vacuum. And that goes back to a very thing that something that people don't necessarily know about, which is that the speed of light is not the same everywhere. The speed of light in a vacuum is about 300,000 meters? No. Gosh. It's about 300,000 kilometers per second. Anyway, I think I've got the units correct about that. It's very, very fast. But through glass, which is what the fiber optics is that transmits data through all of our terrestrial internet, it is much, much slower. I think it's down to about a third of the speed in a vacuum. So it's way, way, way slower. And so basically, if they can transmit data up to space, right, from your satellite or whatever, and then it can go through laser to a whole bunch of other satellites and then down to, let's say I'm in the United States, and so it goes to Europe or something, right? It can be faster to do that, even though it has to go into space first, than it is to send things through terrestrial transmission. So it can actually be faster than terrestrial internet. And one of the deals is that they're planning on, at least I haven't heard about this in a while, but Starlink supposedly, or SpaceX with Starlink, is supposedly going to sell some, very expensive high-end versions or packages or something that have ultra low latency. And the reason why people care is because the folks in New York and the folks in Paris and the folks in London and other countries around the world that do super fast sub-second trading really, really care about latency. And so that low latency is not just nice for us consumers so we can play our video games and everything effectively, but it's very important. People can make money if they can get on the internet and make a trade faster than somebody else. So it's kind of a crazy thing, and that's the opposite of me, right? They're literally trading constantly all the time, where what I've done with my investment strategy, such as it is to just buy and never ever sell anything. So I would not make a very good microsecond trader person. But anyway, I think this is a very valuable graphic that just shows about the distance and why it's much, much faster to have all of these satellites in space, even with the very, very much more complex architecture that has to happen with that. So anyway, I think that's quite useful. And let's take a look at one more thing here. Yes. All right. Let me move this up. Like I said, it's a little bit of an awkward thing to move around using OBS. But okay, so the number of satellites, this is kind of a cool thing. If you look at this, you can see that the satellites, and let me move my own little, oops, not that. I need to move me. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm going to move myself over to the side. All right, so you can see that so far the number of satellites that have launched have been in the, let me move this out of the way so I can see, just a couple of thousand per year. But the planned number of satellites, and a huge amount of this is Starlink, but the planned number of satellites is 25,000 plus planned satellites in the next 5 years or something like that. So this is going to dwarf everything that has happened up until this point. And I think that's actually super interesting. So at any rate, all of this is just to say that ARK... Oh, Galaxy Invest says, why is Netflix in the fund? I believe because Netflix is a gigantic consumer of internet. I think that's what it is, basically. And I don't know specifically, I don't have any kind of knowledge personally, but maybe ARK does, that Netflix is investing in high-speed internet, but I know they chomp on some serious bandwidth. So they're constantly chewing on bandwidth because they serve so many people so much data. If you think about a 4K stream, even though it's compressed, it's using megabits and megabits per second per customer. So I think that they are a huge consumer of the internet services. And so space internet, anything they can do to serve more people far, far away from urban areas, that would be one advantage. And another one would be to diversify their portfolio so that they can feed the streams to more people. Bernard asks... Tesla. Bernard asked about Elon Musk and being CEO of Tesla. I don't think Tesla would still exist without Elon Musk. So that's my quick answer. I know it was started by other people, but I don't think that Tesla would exist without Elon Musk. So that's my super. It would not just be not as successful. It wouldn't be here otherwise. So there you go. Planet Earth. They'll say, "Look, Yankee tourists again." I guess that's interesting. Galaxy says, actually, this makes sense, similar to what Tesla is doing with mining. Netflix will do with bandwidth. Interesting. That's an interesting analogy. Thank you, Galaxy Invest. So Galaxy's analogy is that Tesla is vertically integrating. They are taking on mining so that they have access to lithium and nickel and all of the other major ingredients to their batteries that they desperately need, because they're worried about everybody else. Like, you don't want to share when there's only a limited supply. So they're trying to vertically integrate so that they can have all the supplies. And so basically what Galaxy is saying is that Netflix is doing the same thing, because the backbone of Netflix, and of course Amazon Prime Video and Hulu Video, et cetera, is having enough internet bandwidth dedicated to you that you can feed all of this stuff. So yes, it is. It's kind of like that's a good analogy. It's like the mines digging up the raw material for the stuff that eventually becomes a battery in a car. In this case, it's the raw material for the little bits of information that eventually get to your house and entertain you. So whatever you think about Netflix, they definitely use a lot of bandwidth, and they definitely want a lot. So anyway, I don't know if anybody has any other little questions or big questions about ARKX. I'm super excited about it. I will buy some shares tomorrow when it comes out. We'll see how many. It depends on the cost. I don't know what the price is going to be at this point, but I would definitely keep an eye on it. And if you have like one of those little stock ticker applications, you can put ARKX on there and just keep an eye out and see what's going on and see if you want to purchase it or not. Anyway, I hope this was valuable. I hope it was interesting. And certainly the live chat, probably not, but later on, let me know in the chat window if you're interested, like the regular chat after this becomes a normal video. Let me know if you're interested in this sort of live stream format again for sort of breaking news episodes, because that way I don't have to spend a huge amount of time like doing all the editing and all of that stuff, and so I can get it to you faster. So just let me know what you think about that. Samuel, one more question here. Samuel, which of ARKX funds are you most bullish on? Ooh, gosh. I think I actually am a big fan of Lockheed Martin, and I know they're a government contractor and everything, but I actually like them. I am not a fan of Boeing. If anybody follows The Angry Astronaut, I feel pretty similar to him. I think Boeing had their moment in the sun, but they kind of blew it. So yeah, I got stocks for sure. But Samuel, so I like Lockheed Martin. I don't have them all off the top of my head. I'm not looking at them right now, so I might be missing a critical one. But I think all of the companies that are invested ancillary to it are important. But I also am really big into the 3D printing companies, because I think they're going to be massively important, not just to building the rockets themselves, but to building things in space. Just like in the International Space Station, you have to be able to create things once you're in space. So I think that's going to be really important too. Bernard asked if Starship is flying today. I believe it is flying tomorrow. I think they rescheduled. I don't remember if it was for weather, but I know the weather was just terrible. So anyway, alrighty. So yeah, and definitely stay tuned for that. If you're interested, you can subscribe for this channel and everything. And I have a lot less viewers, which is a good thing for you guys if you're doing a live stream of like the Starship 11 launch, because I can answer your questions. Whereas a lot of these people have, hundreds of these chat things going on, and so they can't. So I don't know if that says good things about me. I mean, I have a lot of subscribers, but I'm not known for my live streaming, I guess. So anyway, I can answer your questions very directly online, and so hopefully that will be useful. Anyway, so yeah, so definitely stay tuned for that, hopefully tomorrow. And as for everything else, thank you so much for watching. And for people who didn't watch this live, I hope you find this interesting and valuable. And definitely let me know in the comments whether you plan on investing in this new fund, ARKX. Alrighty, I'm signing off. Don't forget about don't mess with Tesla.